Hi, Arcfieldweather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Monday morning, January the 13th. For the most part, this week looks like a relatively quiet week. There will be an Arctic blast that arrives in the eastern states later on tonight into the day on Tuesday. Much colder conditions expected for the mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S. on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Then moderation in temperatures late this week going into the upcoming weekend across the eastern states. Next week, however, looks quite cold. There's widespread bitter cold air is on the table for next week, and it could come with a couple of storm threats to deal with, and we'll talk about that over the next several minutes here. Let's start off by looking at the 2-meter temperature anomaly forecast maps from last night's ensemble run of the European model. Then we'll take a look at the same parameter, the 2-meter temperature anomalies, using the GFS ensemble run from last night. Here we are starting the day off on January the 13th with a lot of colder than normal conditions across the middle of the nation, warmer than normal over the southeastern part of Canada. This Arctic air mass right here drives to the south and east, reaches into the mid-Atlantic region for Tuesday. Temperatures this afternoon could climb to 40 degrees in Philly, maybe 45 in D.C., probably confined to the 20s on Tuesday afternoon following the passage of an evening Arctic frontal system. Stays quite cold right into the middle part of the week, and then look at all this warmer than normal weather here over Canada, southern Canada, by the second half of the week. Some of that expands all the way into the middle part of the U.S. and into the eastern states. Saturday, for example, we could see temperatures in the 40s in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, maybe the chance of showers. And then we're starting to see that colder than normal air showing up here by the second half of the weekend. This is quite impressive indeed. Again, this is an ensemble run, which tends to smooth things out with time. And this happens to be, next week I'm talking about, probably from a climatological point of view, the coldest week of the coldest month of January here. And when you see widespread, well below normal temperatures in the coldest week of the season, that's pretty impressive indeed. We'll move forward, and you see slides to the south and slides to the east. We could see some bitter cold all the way down to Texas. And here we are a week from right now. Take a look at this. This happens to be Inauguration Day, next Monday, January 20th. By the way, there was an inauguration back in 1985, Ronald Reagan's second term. It was so cold in D.C. that they canceled all the outdoor activities. Temperatures were in the single digits all the way down into D.C. on that particular inauguration day, January 1985, which, by the way, followed a stratospheric warming event during the latter part of December. Well, here we go. This is next Monday, and there could be some very, very cold air, maybe moving into the D.C. metro region by Monday. And we'll go out a little bit farther in time, and here we go by next Tuesday. Again, very, very impressive when you see widespread below normal in what is, statistically speaking, the coldest week of the coldest month. That is impressive indeed. And this, again, comes from the European model. Let's take a look for confirmation of this from the GFS model. And here we go, again, the same parameter, 2-meter temperature anomalies here. And we have this Arctic air moving into the Mid-Atlantic for this Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Then, same as the European model, it turns much warmer across much of Canada later in the week. And then here we go by the upcoming weekend. This is Saturday now. Warm in the eastern states, at least for this last day, perhaps starting to change on Sunday here. And then by the time we get into Sunday, just like the European ensemble run, we have widespread below normal conditions by Sunday. And then we go into Monday, Inauguration Day, and that starts to slide into the east, into the deep south. A lot of below normal conditions, basically encompassing the entire nation by next Monday or Tuesday or so. And here we go into next Tuesday. This is a week from tomorrow, the 21st. Again, widespread cold, below normal conditions throughout much of the nation in, again, this statistically speaking, the coldest week of the coldest month of the year. Now, we talked about the likelihood for widespread bitter cold next week. How about storm threats? Well, indeed, I think there are one, perhaps even two storm threats to deal with. Nothing concrete right now, but let's take a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern. This is using the North America view from the GFS ensemble run of last night, going into now the middle part of the week and then the latter part of the upcoming week. Again, this is an ensemble run here, so it tends to smooth things out with time. Now here we go into the upcoming weekend, and we have large trough really setting up shop over the middle part of the nation. And that intensifies, slowly builds to the south and east. So the time we get to next Sunday, January 19th, you have a widespread upper level trough that's really centered over the Hudson Bay region of Canada, but extends all the way down into the south central states. And by the time we get to next Monday, this is 1 week from right now, next Monday is January 20th, Inauguration Day, we have this a deep upper level trough, again centered over the Hudson Bay region and extending all the way down into the south central states. Could that produce a storm in the eastern U.S.? Absolutely. That is on the table for the early part of next week. Maybe even a second storm threat later next week. And here we go, by the time we get to next Tuesday, kind of retreats a little bit to the north, but still an extension of that upper level trough all the way down into the south central U.S. Now let's shift back to the conventional run of the GFS from last night at 0Z. And pretty cold conditions starting off today here on Monday, but by afternoon we'll see temperatures approaching 40 in Philly and 45 in DC. Only moderately chilly conditions this afternoon ahead of the next Arctic front. So let's move forward in time here, and we start to see the drop of the thickness values here, the 540 thickness by this evening, way down across southern Virginia as that next Arctic blast arrives. And here we go into the day on Tuesday. Pretty decent pressure grading sets up, so we'll have much colder conditions tomorrow, places like DC, Philadelphia, New York City, a stiff northwest wind as well. That'll make it feel even colder than the actual air temperature. The 540 line now dropping into North Carolina as that colder air moves in. Again, a lot of wind later on tomorrow into tomorrow night out of the northwest. Continues on Tuesday night. Stays cold, and again, relatively quiet across much of the nation here for this week. There is a system way down in the deep south, but it looks like it heads across Florida and then out to sea. And then we start to see potential big changes in the overall pattern. First, we'll get kind of a surge of warmth into the eastern states. Here we are on Saturday, and winds blow counterclockwise around low, so this is a southwesterly fetch of air here from the Gulf of Mexico all the way into the Ohio Valley, the Middle Atlantic, the Northeast by the time we get to Saturday. Likely seeing afternoon highs well up in the 40s. DC, Philly, New York City, and there can be a threat of showers. Now here comes that cold frontal system right about this time. Again, we saw this widespread Arctic cold here by the time we get to next Sunday and Monday across much of the nation, starting to move into the east, and we'll have this frontal system to deal with. And here we have one storm system that slides to the north and east from the Ohio Valley to the interior part of New England by next Monday. That is not set in stone. That storm system could start farther to the south and east and move up along the cold frontal boundary zone, which would bring this threat of snow and cold farther to the south and east, let's say even into the I-95 corridor region around next Monday or so. This is a week away here. What is quite certain is the widespread bitter cold air mass that's coming for next week. What is a little less certain right now is exactly where the biggest storm threats will take place. Here we are a week from right now, and then that cold air floods all the way down in the deep south. We talked about that 540 thickness line. Look at this, all the way down almost to the Gulf Coast at this time. This is an impressive cold shot coming for next week. And by the way, those same thicknesses, look at this, is as low as 486 thickness right here by latter part of Monday, a week from right now. This is inauguration night at this particular time. When you're seeing a 486 thickness at this particular time of the year, any time of the year, you're talking about below zero temperatures. That's not the wind chill, the actual temperatures below zero throughout a large part of the northern plains at that time, the upper part of the Midwest. Here we go, all the way into next Tuesday. Some signs of another storm possibility later next week. And again, that cold can penetrate all the way down into the deep south early in the middle part of next week. So if indeed a storm comes out of the Gulf states later next week, it could produce some frozen precipitation again all the way down into the deep south. So again, to encapsulate this, relatively quiet for this week across much of the nation, although there will be an Arctic blast that arrives in the mid-Atlantic region later on tonight and keeps it way below normal in much of the eastern U.S. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Moderation in temperatures by the upcoming weekend, maybe even some rain on Saturday along the I-95 corridor region. And then things change, start to transition on Sunday, and a widespread, bitter cold air mass looks like it will encompass much of the nation next week. Again, that is the coldest week, statistically speaking, of the coldest month. And when you have widespread, way below normal temperatures, that is something to be concerned about indeed. Again, next week looks very cold over a very large part of the nation. And we'll talk later in this week about the potential for storms, perhaps early next week and maybe even later on next week. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.